My beautiful mythical creatures, Ace here, Yishi, and today we're doing Kenji. I think we're on chapter 6. Give me a quick sec. Yeah, chapter 6. So, the chapter's called From the Ashes. Here's the summary. Is that a quirk I see? Here are the trigger warnings for this chapter. Panic attacks, drug withdrawal, descriptions of injuries, description of medical examination, sexually suggestive phrasing, and spiders. Spiders. I love spiders. But again, there is spiders. On to the chapter. Izuku stayed hidden for the first few days after his escape. After running between hiding spots for the rest of the night, Izuku had hunkered down in a dumpster for the day. Thankfully, it was full of packaging, so it didn't smell bad, and a few cardboard boxes kept him hidden from everyone. Anyone who may peek inside. He did the same the next day, sleeping in a locked shed he had snuck into through a loose metal sheet in the back. The next day it was a covert near a dock, then another dumpster. After that, he made it into a city far enough away that Izuku felt he could truly disappear. It must have been the weekend, because there were more people around than he thought there should be at this early in the morning. Most of them laughing loudly and stumbling. Behave, computer. Izuku moved away from the noisier streets until he found an abandoned apartment building. The front door was chained, and the boards on the lower window looked secure. So Izuku scrambled up the wall and crawled into the empty rooms near the top, where he collapsed. Izuku felt awful. When he had woken up in the shed, his detox symptoms had been gone, but last night he had started feeling achy, and he shivered constantly. Izuku felt absolutely ravenous, despite having eaten the day before, but the mere thought of food made his stomach roll. Every little noise made his heart race, his eyes fluttering around the room. He was sure something was there, in the dark bathroom, or in the shadows up in the corner. It made it difficult to sleep, even as his body screamed for rest. Through it all, Izuku had to keep pushing away the craving. just the thought of the floaty feeling he would get during a session made him feel infinitively worse. He shouldn't have run away. His brain shuddered, utterly horrified with himself. What the hell was he thinking? Forcing himself to take a few deep breaths, Izuku pulled the cloth sack he had found at the dock towards himself. Inside was a few granola bars he had snatched from a truck in a crinkled plastic water bottle. Izuku drank the water and munched on one of the granola bars, having to stop between bites to fight down the nausea. Kashiki crawled down onto his shoulder. Izuku picked her up and put her on the ground. He filled the bottle cap with water. Drink up. There has to be a few cockroaches around here for you. I'll go and try. I'll be okay. Gonna try and sleep. The lizard studied him for a moment before taking advantage of the water, then scurrying off into the building. Izuku pulled a blanket from his bag. Stealing it from someone's clothesline hadn't been his finest moment. Shuffling into the corner, Izuku laid down and wrapped himself up. It did nothing against the phantom cold, making him practically vibrate, but it made him feel safer. Izuku succumbed to unconsciousness in a few minutes. Izuku and Kasuki spent a couple more nights in the apartment where Izuku wrestled with withdrawals. When Izuku woke to the sun set the first day, he had felt a little better, until he ate and had to rush to the bathroom. Waste of a perfectly good granola bar. After that, he sipped his water and dozed on and off. When he could finally scarf down another bar without his stomach protesting, Izuku planned his next move. They couldn't stay there. The apartment may be a good shelter, but the area had nothing useful. He would have to go deeper into the city to reliably find food. I wonder if you guys find this entertaining, me stumbling over words. Maybe he would get lucky and find a change of clothes. He tried not to hope for shoes, too. They headed out after dark, his stealth skills coming in handy. He always had a hiding spot or an escape route planned, and he stayed near walls so he could climb if he needed to. Izuku had figured out how to turn sticky feet off and on early in their journey. After scouting around for a few days, Izuku found the perfect area. It wasn't too busy, but the mix of homes and businesses meant he would find useful things in the trash. The first good find was a yellow backpack. It was old and well used, and the zipper on the front pocket was broken, but Izuku was happy to ditch the sack. things were not going well. Food was becoming an issue. He couldn't always find something safe in the trash, and he couldn't afford to get sick. Thankfully, water was more plentiful. He knew of several houses that had garden hoses. He had found some clothes. The dumpster behind the small outlet mall was a treasure trove. He snagged some pants close to his size and a couple of t-shirts. The best was the sweater with the bleach stains on the front. No shoes, unfortunately, but he was used to going barefoot now. Izuku's biggest problem was that he hadn't found a permanent shelter yet. Most nights he found a small hidey hole or a dumpster to sleep in. He had quickly realized being out in the open was dangerous. Just a week after moving into the area, someone tried to steal his bag. He was able to trip the man up to give himself enough time to climb the wall, but he was attacked 4 more times in the coming weeks. Now it was raining. The downpour had caught him off guard, so he was huddled in a rear delivery door for a cafe. Normally, he would be searching for food at the convenience stores a few streets over, but the pre-packaged sandwiches and bruised apples he had gotten from their trash smelt off and had a bitter taste. The cafe's dumpsters hadn't had much to offer either, but at least they smelt awning above their back. At least they had a small awning above their back door. It hadn't looked like the rain would let up, so Izuku settled in for a sleepless night, but soon felt exhaustion creeping up, and his eyes drooped as he fell asleep. When Izuku woke in the morning, damn it! When he woke in the morning, he was warm and cozy. Something soft was laying against his arm. The soft thing moved. Startling awake, Izuku found himself buried in cats, curled up in his lap, under his legs, and nestled between his arm and his body. One was perched right on his chest, a large calico. Her yellow-brown flickered eyes bore into him. She yowled when she noticed him awake. Izuku figured he must have trespassed on their territory. There were more cats laying nearby, lounging around the steaming vent at the ramen place next door. Turning his quirk on, Izuku felt the familiar ripple under his skin, but this time it was in different areas. His vision and hearing were suddenly sharper. He yelped and shifted slightly when a fluffy, deep green tail grew just above his tailbone. Looking at his hands, he had 10 white, slightly curved claws. Running his tongue over his teeth revealed they were sharper, his canines noticeably larger than the rest. The calico meowed, this time sounding more friendly as she came forward to smell him. Soon enough, she was purring and headbutting his face. She put her front paws on his shoulder and started grooming his new furry ears. The cat present startled Kasuki, who crawled down Izuku's neck and scurried under his collar. The calico reached out to bat at the lizard, but Izuku twisted his body and shocked himself by releasing a deep growl. The cat paused before going back to purring and grooming him, seemingly getting the message that the little reptile was off limits. The colony quickly adopted Izuku. The calico was the leader, so Izuku started calling her Queenie. It became clear pretty fast that Queenie had decided Izuku was her kitten. The first thing the cat taught him was how to access the tunnels. Most of the city had a maze of sewers. Most of the city had a maze of sewers. Most of the city had a maze of sewers, service tunnels, and old cellars that created a convenient way to move around as long as you didn't get lost. It was dry most of the time, and the cats knew where the warm spots were, so Izuku didn't have to worry about shelter anymore. He soon didn't have to worry about food either. After a couple of weeks following the colony, Izuku had learned the patterns of the restaurants and the grocery stores in the area. He knew when delivery day was and what night they purged old inventory and cleaned out the fridges. Not having to worry about basic needs anymore meant Izuku could train his quirk. So far he had only ever borrowed lizard and cat. Using cat was awkward since he needed to touch one. Since he had to be touching one. The claws and advanced senses would be great for defense, but it was hard to fight carrying a cat. He stumbled onto the solution by accident. Sometimes the colony found food their human kitten couldn't eat, like raw meat or cans of cat food. Some good Samaritan had left out, so Izuku would go off on his own. One night, he had scurried around a bakery of bagels when some muggers blocked the alley. "Hey, what you got in the bag, kid?" Izuku hissed and quickly activated Lizard to scurry up the wall, but one of his attackers grabbed his ankle and pulled him back down. Izuku kicked him away and scrambled back. He yowled and spit at them angrily. "Fucking kid is feral," one of the men commented. "I know this brat. It's the cat kid. Runs around with a bunch of alley cats." At the mention of his colony, Izuku instinctively tried to reach out to borrow claws, even though he knew he couldn't do it without Queenie or one of the other cats. To his surprise, Izuku felt the ripple of his quirk. Izuku hissed again, the effects was much more impressive The effect was more impressive with his fangs and green eyes flashing in the streetlight. He swept out at the closest mugger, who backed away from the razor's sharp claws and tripped over his companion. Izuku took his chance to vault onto the closest dumpster and leap for the fire escape, where he activated Lizard and started crawling along the wall of the back street. He got another surprise when he heard a slight click with each step and realized he still had claws. He was using Lizard and Cat at the same time. When he rounded the corner, he headed up and pulled himself onto the roof. One of the men dashed out of the alleyway and looked around. Where'd he go? His friend followed more slowly. Who cares? That's not a child. That's a demon. We're not fucking with that kid. He walked away. His buddy looked around one more time when he glanced up and jumped upon seeing Izuku watching him and hurried after his companion. Safe on the roof, Izuku chattered softly to check on Kiski. The lizard scurried around in a circle before settling in again. Izuku took the hint. He looked down at his hands with both sticky feet and claws activated and started analyzing. How did I use cat? Izuku wondered. I thought I needed to be touching the animal, but there aren't even cats around. Maybe it's something else? Izuku looked himself over, but nothing was different. The same skinny kid wearing dirty, ripped jeans and a cat hair-covered hoodie. Wait, that was it! Izuku rolled up his sleeves and found a bit of fur caught in the fleecy inner lining. I don't have to touch the whole animal, just part of them. My quirk probably only requires a DNA source. I could work with this. Izuku made his way back to the alley where the cats had been eating scraps from a butcher shop. He was soon following the colony down a storm drain to settle in for the night. Laying out his blanket in one of the offshooting pipes, Izuku curled up with his family. He gave attention to each one as they drifted off, collecting any fur that may come loose. When he had a healthy pile, he started rolling it between his hands until the hair became a tight, coiled core. Pulling some loose threads from his jeans, he braided it with the coil just to make it more durable and secured it around his wrist. He smiled. Now he can use cat whenever he wanted. I should do the same thing next time Kiski sheds, Izuku thought as he drifted off, lulled by the warmth and soft purring. The next morning, Izuku headed to his favorite place. The great thing about the sewers wasn't just the ability to travel under the radar, but all the places you could access. There were several old buildings in the city that were still connected to the tunnels via their basements. One was the public library. It wasn't well funded, so it had basic security. As long as he didn't open any doors or windows, then he wouldn't set off the alarm. Izuku had spent many nights there researching. He was determined to keep studying. He wrote everything he learned down in the notebooks he had shoplifted and went through all the practice books he could find. Izuku was more fascinated with zoology. He figured he had to be because of his quirk. But he truly did enjoy learning about amazing creatures from all over the world. Izuku couldn't wait to explore the limits of his quirk. The boy ran. He didn't know where he was, but he didn't want to stay in that little room tucked away at some kind of run-down medical facility. When he had woken, he tried to take a deep breath, but choked and coughed painfully. There was a tube in his nose. He clawed at it with stiff fingers and succeeded in grasping it, pulling out the seamlessly endless length of plastic made him gag. He threw it away, reached for the IV in his arm. When he moved, his skin felt too tight. It pulled in weird places. The boy stopped. That wasn't his hand. His hand didn't have purple, almost black skin on the back. And it definitely didn't have fucking staples holding it together. He pulled back the sleeve and saw the deep plum color continue down his arm. He followed it to his shoulder and across his chest. He was finding it hard to breathe as he looked under the collar of the gray t-shirt and found another line of staples. How far up did it go? He ran his fingers up his throat. He didn't feel it. He couldn't feel it. He couldn't feel his chin or his bottom lip. There were more staples along his cheeks, all the way back to his ears. What the fuck was going on? The boy remembered the mountain. His father screaming at him to move faster, to be better. Trees wrapped in blue and red flames. He remembered his anger, his loneliness, his desperation for someone to help him. He remembered not dodging in time. He remembered burning. The unbearable heat, the smell of charred flesh. Then he remembered nothing. The boy, Toya, didn't remember removing the IV or crawling under the bed. He curled up so tight he felt the stinging of the staples along his shoulder blades and across his lower back. The boy sobbed, but no tears came. His body wouldn't stop shaking. He should be dead. He should be a pile of ash blowing away. What hellish power had kept him alive? It was that need to know that coaxed the boy from hiding. There was a clipboard hanging from the bed. The boy had to hold the mattress as he walked. His legs feel like pudding. The medical report was just a single page, written in messy, hurried handwriting. Specimen ID, Dobby. Experimentation? Experimentation. Specimen was found on the road outside Sikoto Peak Forest in November XXX3. Severely burned and comatose. Project Dobby. Project Dobby is the perfect specimen to test the prototype bioregenerated skin. Approximately 50% of the specimen's body is covered in 3 to 4 degree burns. The burns on his lower jaw appeared to have reached bone. December XXX3. Remove of the burned skin under the specimen eyes went well, but the damage to the tear ducts is severe. The removal of the burns on the lower jaw revealed a chunk of bone is missing. Perhaps I should test bio-generated bone while I'm at it. Removal of all skin burned beyond 2nd degree from the neck down has gone smoothly. Specimen has been wrapped up in bandages soaked in a quirk strengthened antibiotic solution. February XXX4. All grafts, including lower jaw, are complete. The new bone will take more time to engineer. The specimen has been rewrapped in the antibacterial bandages. I will check back in a couple weeks to see how the foreign skin has bonded to the living tissue. March XXX4. The grafts seem to have bonded quite well with the dermis and hypodermis. But the connection between the living epidermis and the edges of the graft is fragile. It appears additional precautions will be needed to take to ensure new skin doesn't peel off. Stitches, tape, staples. June XXX4. The new jaw bone is in place. Developing the skin grafts to maintain the shape of the cheeks and chin and restore the specimen's bottom lip was a delightful challenge. The prototype of the bioengineered skin and bone is a success. Dobby has shown himself to be highly compatible. If he regains consciousness, it will be foolish to not use him to test version 2. May XXX5. The specimen has begun to breathe on his own and is finally showing signs of waking up. Breathing tube has been removed. The boy, Toya Dobby, could barely read the final notes on the look up. Chronicle, a frantical writing access of important or historical events in order. The chronicle of horror in his hands. He shook, and he kept having to force his eyes to refocus as he began hyperventilating. Even as the words swarm, the dates were in clear focus. He had been here for 1.5 years. The skin over half his body had been scraped off and cut away and replaced with some sick bastard's science experiments, stapled together like a shitty mosaic, a picture or pattern produced by arranging together small colored pieces of stapled together like a shitty mosaic. And they planned to do it again. This time, while he was awake, he had to get out. Tossing the clipboard to the bed, Dobby struggled to the door. It was unlocked. The hallway was dark and smelt musty, and the drywall was yellow at the edges. He kept his hand on the wall as he walked. His muscles burned with every step. He made it to what used to be receptionist. It was like everyone had just left one day and didn't come back. There was a jacket on the back of a chair. It was dusty and worn, but he grabbed it anyways. As he threw it on, Dobby felt one of the staples snag. It stung, but thankfully had only pulled on the scar side. He poked it back. It stung, but thankfully only pulled out on the scarred side. He poked it back into the numb skin with little pain. This was going to be a problem. If he lost staples, he had no replacement. He would slowly start coming apart at the seams. Dobby remembered passing a storage closet, so he backtracked and rummaged through the supplies until he found what he was looking for: a box of medical staples and the stapler to go with it. He grabbed a pillowcase and stuffed everything inside, adding a blanket and some basic first aid supplies while he was at it. Throwing his makeshift bag over his shoulder, he made his way back to the receptionist. He burst through the front door and sprinted into the fading light. Dobby ran. Dobby didn't know what he was doing. When he had ran from the facility, he hadn't thought about what to do next. He couldn't go home to his family. His father had left him to die, and his siblings were probably already mourning him. Besides, it hadn't been home for a long time. Living on the streets was hard. Food was scarce, but he had discovered that it had taken him a few months to actually wake up. And it was already August, so the weather was nice enough to sleep outside. Unfortunately, it didn't take him long to realize that there was more to worry about than some rain. One night he was spooked awake by a couple of drunks stumbling into his alley. He hoped they would ignore him. "Hey, kid." "Guess not." "What a pretty boy like you doing in a place like this." Oh, they were drunk. There was no way anything about him would be described as pretty. Matted off-white hair, pale skin between ugly scars, and so malnourished you could see his bones. "Want to have some fun?" One of the men stepped forward unsteadily. Dobby ran. He seemed to be doing that a lot. Over the next couple of weeks, he only managed to doze off for a couple of hours at a time, too scared to actually fall asleep. He did manage to find some food by going through trash behind a bakery. The stale muffins he found was the best thing he ever tasted, and the bag of cookies would keep for a while. Of course, his luck had ran out. He rummaged through the garbage in an alley, not finding much of anything, when someone grabbed the back of his jacket. "Look what we have here. A grubby little street urchin. Got something interesting in that bag of yours?" The two men had managed to sneak up on him. The one holding him was tall and broad. His buddy, standing a little behind, with gray eyes and hair. Dobby reached for his quirk. He could feel the lick of flames seeping through the seams of his scars. But the man was too close to burn. Dobby couldn't afford to damage what little he owned. You see a kid digging through the trash and thought they would have something worth to steal? He snarked. "Mouthy brat, we'll be the judge of that, and if you don't have anything, we'll have some fun and carve you up a little." Dobby's mind went back to that little room, his imagination conjuring up the image of his unconscious body laying limp as some shadowy doctor removed his skin. Dobby twisted and shrugged off the oversized jacket. He tried to dash away, but one of the men grabbed his wrists. Dobby cried out as he felt the staples ripped. The next moment he was frozen mid-step. He could still move his eyes, but the rest of him refused to cooperate. "Little bitch, we'll teach you to run away." Dobby was punched in the side of the head. It knocked him to the ground, causing the gray man to release him. He could move again, but the tall man kicked him right in the staples along his stomach, causing them to dig in deeper. A rumbling growl filled the alley, making the men stop and look around. Dobby looked around too, desperate. Dobby looked around too, despite his pounding head, and all three of them caught sight of something charging. Saw a sight of something clinging to the alley wall. It was human-shaped, but the big toxic green eyes that had slits like a cat, sharp claws making a scraping noise as they dug into the brick. It wore a leather mask over its mouth and nose. Most striking was the huge bat wings that matched its ears, folded on its back. "Shit! It's Kaijin." "No way. It's just another kid. Kaijin isn't real." The creature hissed, something seemingly offended at the denial of its existence. "I'm telling you, I'm done with this. We'll just have some fun with this. I'm done with this. We'll just have some fun with this one too." The tall man reached out and touched the wall, causing it to distort in a wave towards the thing. The gray man ran forward and Dobby tried to take the opportunity to escape, but he got dizzy and fell again. He heard a surprised shout and something land beside him. He looked up with unfocused eyes and saw the creature crouched over him. Its wings were gone, but its legs looked wrong. Its feet had lengthened, looking up. Yeah, and lengthened and became covered in green fur, enlarged. Its feet had enlarged and became covered in gray fur. The thing was standing on its toes, posed to pounce. It hissed again and chattered like an irritated cat. Dobby heard running steps and watched in growing horror as 8 long appendages erupted from the thing's back. 2 of them struck out at the men, and the remaining 6 curved around it, pointed threateningly towards the attackers. They turned and fled. Black had encroached on Dobby's vision as the creature leaned over him. Its legs were normal again, and the sharp limbs were gone. Only the eyes and ears remained. It had dark hair. It had dark hair with a couple feathers braided into it. A pair of aviator goggles around his neck, along with a few necklaces, and a nasty scar across his cheek and around its eye. The creature chirped curiously as Dobby finally passed out. Izuku had started simply with testing his quirk. He had access to the bones of most farm animals thanks to the restaurants in the area. Most were disappointing. Chicken, cow, and pig didn't do much. Just a few cosmic changes. Growing feathers was a weird sensation. So was walking on hooves, and noises he could make with a pig snout made him giggle, but it was nothing useful. Some more research at the library revealed that most animals killed for consumption were the female of the specimens. He would have to find rooster, boar, and bull to get anything useful from them. When he came across rabbit, he was surprised that the long ears actually had weaker hearing than his cat ears. So he switched them off, but the legs were a huge improvement to his agility. The feeling of his feet enlarging and his calves shortening was strange, but he could run faster and jump higher, leaping between walls and across rooftops on his strong, furry legs was the most fun Izuku had in a long time. His first experience with wings fell onto his lap. Literally, one of the cats caught a pigeon. The sensation of something erupting from his shoulder blades felt like someone pulling out a huge splinter. Thankfully, it was uncomfortable rather than painful. Flying was such a rush. It was even better than roof hopping with Rabbit. Gliding above the city, he could see everything, and no one could get to him. flapping and turning in the air, diving between buildings and fluttering and flittering, looking up, flitting, moving swiftly and lightly. And flitting through trees was Izuku's favorite way to travel when above ground. A few weeks later, Izuku spotted a falcon nest and was able to snatch a feather. Pigeon's wings had nothing on the strength and looking up. Aerodynamics. Pigeon wings had nothing on the strength and aerodynamics of falcon wings. Izuku had to start wearing goggles and a mask just to counteract the wind speed. Izuku also started noticing changes outside his quirk. At first he thought his hair only looked darker because he was using store windows as mirrors, but eventually he couldn't deny his hair was so dark that it was basically black. You could only see the green in direct light. The effect wasn't like his feathers. His ears also became pointed like an elf. Was it a quirk side effect? Would other things change as he collected more animals? There was only one way to find out. Bat ears were no joke. He could hear the grass rustling against each other. He could hear the grass rubbing against each other. Izuku had to spend weeks getting used to the sensory overload before he could wear them for long periods. When he finally tested sonar, Izuku was amazed how much he could see. Navigating the sewers was a breeze when he could map out all the nearby tunnels. With a few low-frequency clicks. Sleeping upside down was pretty comfortable too. His toes grew giant hook-like claws with an iron grip. He finally found Rooster when he started exploring the outskirts of the city. A family was raising chickens, and all it took was some food, and he was able to pluck a feather. Izuku grew sharp spurs just above his heel that carved upwards, the perfect hidden weapon for emergencies. It could be deployed without anyone noticing as long as he didn't also manifest the green-brown feathers along his neck and shoulders. It took longer than it should have for Izuku to remember bugs existed, specifically spiders. When he caught one of the little jumping spiders that lived all over the tunnels, the sensation of 8 long, thin limbs grew from his back between his shoulder blades and hips was just as uncomfortable as growing wings. He could control each leg individually, and they were plenty strong enough to suspend him off the ground, but Izuku thought he could do better. The next time he went to the library, he dove into researching spiders. He found the perfect specimen, wisp spiders. Were one of the largest non-poisonous spiders in Japan. Most importantly, they spun webs. Izuku found and trapped several wisp spiders and started harvesting their silk. Izuku had struggled to find a way to keep the spider's ability close without actually having a spider on him. A book on strange facts about animals had clued him into spider silk thread, which is pretty simple to make. In no time he had a new bracelet beside the braided cat fur and the ribbon of a bit of kiskis shed stitched under it. Wisp spider legs were much more sleek and durable than the soft, furry jumping spider legs. His new limbs were so sharp they could cut deep gouges into concrete. As hard as Izuku tried to stay hidden, his quirk experiments had drawn some attention. Sorry, this is so long. Of course, the muggers and other lowlifes tried to mess with the kid. The kid had spread the story of a demon child roaming about at night. After that, there were a few sightings of him practicing parkour or rummaging for food. Soon, news of a shapeshifter lurking in alleys made its way around town. When students got a hold of the rumors, the stories became practically fictional. He was a monster. He was a villain. He was a yokai. He was a vigilante. He was an escaped experiment. Eventually, someone managed to get some shaky footage of him testing climbing and roof jumping with his spider legs. The image landed him solidly in the realm of supernatural for most people. Over time, he became Kaijin, a shape-shifting cryptid that hunted dark streets at night and could disappear in an instant. Izuku didn't mind becoming Kaijin. No one bothered him anymore except for the occasional teenager that had been dared to hunt him down. They were easy to avoid, and the ever-evolving tall tales were amusing. I heard it steals children. Izuku's ears swiveled towards two older kids walking down the park path. He perched in a tree near the playground. No way, that's just a story to make sure kids don't wander around at night. It's true. My sister's classmate says their cousin's friend saw it while walking home after dark. It tried to snatch her. Really? Did she say what it looked like? She said it had dark fur all over and huge fangs and claws and glowing green eyes. Izuku huffed. He supposed he could use a haircut, but his fangs and claws aren't that big and his eyes don't glow. That would be horrible for his stealth. Izuku was distracted by the sound of something scurrying up the tree trunk. Glancing down, he saw Kiski climbing onto his branch after a successful hunt. The lizard hurried up Izuku's leg and sat patiently on his knee, waiting to be moved into his hair. The students walked too far away down the path for him to hear, even with his bat ears on, so he supposed it was time to go back. Oh my goodness, this is such a long chapter. I'm so sorry. Putting Kiski on his head, Izuku jumped down and turned off his quirk. Normally, Izuku kept his cat abilities and bat ears active at all time, but school had just let out, and there were a lot of people around. If no one paid attention to the dirty clothes and his grungy appearance, Izuku would look like just any other kid released onto the streets after class. He made his way to a quiet neighborhood and found a sewer gate and climbed back into the safety of the tunnels. As he hurried back to the colony, he thought about what the girl had said. Their cousin's friend saw it while walking home after dark. It tried to snatch her. Most tales about Kaijin were entirely made up, but Izuku actually knew where this one came from. A few months before, he spotted a girl who missed her bus being harassed by a couple of drunks. He had pulled her into an alley to hide. She thanked him once she realized he wasn't going to hurt her, and ran to catch the next bus. That night had rekindled something in Izuku. His old dream of being a hero rose to the surface. He knew it could never happen. He had probably been forgotten or presumed dead by now. He had committed dozens of crimes for the sake of survival, but part of him longed to reach out and help in any way he could. It was time for Kaijin to come out of hiding. Donning his mask and goggles, he had started patrolling the area that had become his territory. It started small, scaring away drunks harassing people, and breaking up muggings. But soon he started going after bigger preys. Criminals feared the demons, while regular citizens felt safer knowing their resident cryptic was watching over the neighborhood. He loathed the drug dealers the most. Any deals he came across were dealt with harshly. The first time he came across a trigger sale, he had to push away the nasty little craving that would probably never fall completely silent. He dragged the criminals out to the streets for the cops and smashed the vials. Crime fighting paid too. Any criminal he caught had the cash in their wallet stolen. Izuku enjoyed fresh food and new clothes for the first time in forever. He even upgraded his vigilante costume. His mask and goggles were leather now, and way more comfortable than the medical mask and old safety goggles he had been using. He wore a black hooded and cropped sweater that only covered his arms and shoulders, with a green tank top underneath. He had altered it to have an open back for his wings and spider legs. The tank top was tucked into black tactical cargo shorts he had found at a surplus store. The pockets were full of useful things, like first aid, snacks, and a couple of knives he had confiscated. Izuku still went barefoot. After years of being without shoes, the thought of wearing any now made him antsy. It would feel unnatural. Izuku was snapped out of his memories by a loud cry from street level. He hurried to the closest storm drain while pulling on his mask and climbing into the mouth of an alleyway. "Teach you to run away," someone yelled, followed by a thud and a gasp. Izuku scrambled up the wall to get a better view and found two men beating up a skinny boy with purple scars. He recognized the teen. He was new to the streets and was struggling to adjust. Izuku had hidden behind some dumpsters to watch him one day. The boy looked so happy when he found muffins that Izuku wasn't even annoyed to miss out. Turning on his claws and adding bat wings for intimidation, he growled at the men. One instantly recognized him, and the other denied he could be Kaijin. When the taller man touched the wall and the bricks rippled and rushed towards him, Izuku jumped to the ground. As the gray-haired one ran to intercept him, he wasn't fast enough. Turning off the wings, Izuku activated Rabbit and leaped over his attacker. He landed in a protective crouch over the teen, chattering a warning. When the men turned for another attack, Izuku activated Spider and cut them off by spreading two legs into the concrete at their feet, leaving sizable craters. They quickly retreated. Izuku turned his attention to the older boy. He was looking back at him with awe and a little fear in his eyes. Izuku chirped. He hadn't used his voice in years, but hoped the soft sound would be soothing. The boy passed out. That is the end of Chapter 8. Chapter 7, that's the end of Chapter 6. Chapter 7 will be up next. Chapter 7 is starting over doesn't mean forgetting. Summary. My kitten brought me another one. I guess I have two now. Queenie. That is so freaking cute. I have something quick to say, and then that is the end of this video. So I'm going to be very busy these couple coming weeks because my school is ending in 4 weeks now. Shocker. So I will be recording videos in advance for this PodFic and my other one, and the other one I'm working on, and whatever I can write up in my spare time for the ones I'm working on personally. But it'll probably only be like 5, including this one. Like 5 videos for this one and 5 for the other one. So that would be 10, probably. Once I get settled back at home, I will be continuing. So if all of a sudden no videos get posted in like after 4 weeks are over, 4 or 5 weeks are over, then I'm sorry, but I will be trying to continue posting. But until next time, my beautiful mythical creatures, peace out, stay hydrated, and eat donuts.